Hi, I'm Kelly Patton, Steward for Community Outreach here at St. Michael Parish, and I was asked to share a little bit about my faith journey with you today. So I was not born a cradle Catholic. I joined the Catholic Church a few years ago, and I grew up Methodist, and we lived in California, and we moved to Tucson. From there, I was really at a point in life when I was 13 where it's like you're hungry and you want more and you want to go deeper, and I wasn't finding that in church initially, and so that restlessness started setting in, and unfortunately that I started to think that what I was seeing at Sunday school and church, that was kind of it, that was as deep as it went with Christianity, and I just was completely unaware of the vastness of the history and what is really there, the richness to our faith. And what started to change for me was when there were a lot of refugees coming up from Central America. This was in the 1980s, and people in Tucson started to become aware of this. And there were ranchers that were talking about people, they were finding bodies out in the desert, and so it really became a big deal. And there was a little church in South Tucson, and they started doing something about it, and they were becoming very active, and I started seeing people putting their faith into action. And this was something that was just tremendous as a teenager, to see people really putting themselves out there for their belief. And those beliefs were really coming into conflict with our laws, and to watch that unfold, I just found it fascinating. And I was so struck when I went to that little church, and it was in the poorest part of the community. So these were people that had the least resources materially. They had the most to risk, and yet they were risking everything, and they were really putting themselves out there for their beliefs. And so I kept going back. By then I had my driver's license, and I would drive down to this church every Sunday and sit in the back and just watch and soak it in. And really, I started to feel for the first time alive in my faith. Like, this is what it is. This is putting our Christian faith into action, into service. And I remember meeting a young girl. She was my age, and she had walked from Guatemala to Arizona when she was about 14 or 15, and she had witnessed her parents being killed in Guatemala. And she came up here, and she was in Nogales, which is the border town between Arizona and Mexico, and one of the ladies in the church had found her down there and brought her to Tucson and saved her life. And it was incredibly powerful. And I really, at the same time, I didn't know what to do with all this. I didn't know how to even take all this in. And it was powerful. And I continued to go there to that church until the time when I left for college. And when I did that, when I moved away from Arizona and found myself in the college setting, I started to really shift my thinking and feeling like that maybe the Christianity wasn't as important as long as I was living those things, as long as I was putting it into action. It was okay if I didn't go to church. And so this started taking root, and I started slowly leaving behind all the pieces around prayer and faith and God, and that just got left behind. And what I carried forward with me into my life was this passion for service. And it took me really a lot of years to come full circle back to that. And in the meantime, I moved to Seattle, and by then I'd forgotten so much that I didn't even realize, I couldn't identify what this hole in my heart was, and I didn't recognize it as a God-shaped hole. And so I was trying to start my life and start my career and find my way in the world, and I had left all that behind, and I knew that I was dissatisfied, and I knew that I didn't like the materialism and just the shallowness of what I was seeing around me. so I continued to look outward, and I went even further outward, and I went overseas to Turkey, and I was teaching and going into different villages until I found a place that I really loved, and I stayed there for a couple of years. And I was just fascinated with the life there, and I was fascinated with the way that their faith life was woven together with their daily life. And the call to prayer is 5 times a day, and people would stop what they were doing and remember their faith life. And so that really resonated with me, but I still wasn't recognizing how much I needed that for myself, not just watching other people. And I really think that time of my life where there was this, everything was hidden there. There were caves and rocks, and it was vast, and there were churches that were hidden. And that's how I felt my interior life was as well. Everything was kind of hidden. My faith was hidden from me, and I didn't even know that I was longing for it. And I just was in that desert. And it was a really difficult time for that reason, because it's one thing if you are lost and you know what you're looking for, and it's another thing to just be lost going in circles because you know something's missing and you just don't know what. And so when I came back a few years later to Western Washington, and by then it was, the struggle of culture shock coming back was much worse than leaving. And I really didn't know where to fit in or what to do. And that's kind of when I found myself more and more participating in the life out in our tribal communities here along the Puget Sound. And I was getting more and more involved out there, and would go to ceremonies, and found, once again, this is similar to Turkey, where people were really living with their faith woven into their daily life. And it was beautiful, and I felt like that longing for the truth, but it was still so I wasn't quite able to put my finger on what it was that I was resonating so much with. And I didn't feel like I was that I had faith of my own. I felt like you had to either have it or you didn't, and one of the things that was so powerful in that setting was people would come all the time who were just completely broken, and they would show up for ceremonies, and they had no faith, and they had no hope really, and they were wide open, and they were able to surrender slowly over time. And over the years, again and again and again, I watched people go from that place of absolute desperation and hopelessness to a place of incredible healing and faithfulness in their lives. And watching those transformations was just life-saving for me, because I was not at that place where everything was so bad that I was just wide open to the Holy Spirit. I was in that lukewarm place where things are comfortable enough that I can get by. And I'm not there. I'm not able to surrender fully because I haven't been laid out bare and raw. But even to see the possibility, even to see that other people could do it, that you could find a faith, you could build a faith, that was tremendous. And eventually I got to a point where I realized it is time for me to rejoin my own community. Like, for over 12 years, I've been in other cultures and communities and more of an observer than a participant. And it was time for me to really participate in my own life in a deeper way. And so I stopped working for the tribe, and I got a job here in Olympia. I was working in the secular nonprofit sector in a very intense environment where a lot of the people coming in were deeply, deeply traumatized. But in the secular environment, faith wasn't allowed. It's not invited in. God is not invited in as part of the picture. Is the main source of the healing. And I noticed that right away. And over the years, it just started to really hurt my heart more and more that was missing. And I also simultaneously was really noticing that increasingly it just felt like everything was about my truth. There wasn't an acknowledgement anywhere that there is truth. It's all subjective. And that started to feel really messy more and more. I felt like this is a recipe for absolute disaster. When everybody around me, and including myself, we're all operating according to our own truth, this does not end well. And so I really felt like it was time for me to re-examine what I had left behind so many years earlier. I recognized that, when I walked away from Christianity, I was 20 years old, and I've changed a lot over the years. And I suspected that the reasons for my leaving it behind didn't exist anymore, that I had changed and my viewpoints had changed, and I needed to look at this again. And so I did, and I started going back to church, but I felt like I really wanted to receive the Eucharist, and I didn't really know why, because I had been raised where it's just a symbol, but there was a longing there, and I had no idea what that was about. And I also wanted to pray the rosary, and I never even considered Catholicism. I didn't have an opinion about it one way or the other. It just had never crossed my mind that I would ever pursue becoming Catholic. But suddenly I just found myself wanting to pray the rosary for some reason. And so I went online, I Googled it and learned on YouTube how to pray the rosary. And from there, it was a very fast conversion into the Catholic faith. I was just fascinated, and every day just praying the rosary, and more finding that the truth within the Catholic Church was what I had been searching for all my life without even realizing it. And within 6 or 8 months, I was confirmed, and I feel like it's the start of this incredible new journey. In prayer, especially during this season of Lent, taking on those things that are a challenge to your faith and to traveling more deeply with it, and saying, maybe I'm not right about this. Maybe there's a bigger picture here that I haven't seen yet. And that is beautiful. And it's such a mystery. And I think that it is a beautiful thing for us to embrace that not knowing and that confusion, and the truth that God is the center of our lives, and to continually put Him there each day.